So we move on to the next speakers, and the NKF is promoting home dialysis at every opportunity. And the next two ladies are very much part of our campaign. They always seem to be upbeat and supportive. It's Donna and Patricia.
Hello, my name is Donna Holmes. I'm 47, married to Rob, and have a 19-year-old stepson called Owen and an 8-year-old black Labrador called Jasper. And I have IgA nephropathy, which I'm at end stage, stage 5, and I'm currently receiving home haemodialysis via a next stage machine, which I've named Norbit. How was I diagnosed? By pure fluke, you could say. I changed doctors in 2011 and had to have a well woman MOT, which they did the usual, asked questions, tested my water, and did blood tests. I was called later that night to say that I needed an urgent referral to a nephrologist, that I was possibly stage 1 CKD. Now, obviously, this scared me. I asked the doctor what it was and how had I got it. I had had protein leakage since I had kidney stones just before my 21st birthday. And since then, the previous doctor would sort of say to me, oh, it's you with the protein leakage. My current doctor said it could be because of that, but also that I suffer with hypertension and was diagnosed with this back in 2004. I saw my nephrologist 6-monthly intervals initially and was okay. However, this is an autoimmune disease and it attacks my kidneys. And I went quickly from stage 1 to stage 3. Holding at stage 3 till around about 2016, when I progressed to stage 4. I was feeling really fatigued, had bad cramps, restless legs, and every time I went to see my consultant, which was more regular, my kidney functions declined further. So it was now time to decide what treatment I would receive before it actually got to that stage. So time to choose which treatment. I was told all about the options of dialysis, and unfortunately, due to tissue scarring from a previous surgery in my stomach, the only option for me was haemodialysis. I was given a lot of information by the hospital, looked around the unit, and was told to go away, write a list of pros and cons, speak to my husband, and decide which dialysis would be best for me and my family. Looking around the unit, I have to say it swayed my decision towards home haemodialysis for a few reasons. So I wanted to fit dialysis around my life and not the other way around, as the disease for the previous 2 years had taken so much out of me. The second reason, I wanted to take control of my treatment, not having someone to do this for me. And the third reason, I didn't want to feel like I was ill and a kidney patient going into hospital all the time. And I totally understand that not everybody's able to do home dialysis or would want to. So getting started with in Unit HD, I moved from stage 4 to 5 quite quickly, initially having my fistula operation in August 2020, which unfortunately didn't mature to the smallness of my veins. By the time I was due for dialysis, I was sleeping most of the day, some days not even getting dressed. My kidney function had declined to 8%, so it was decided I would be put on the emergency list for a neckline to be inserted, which was actually just over 2 years ago now to the date. And I started my first haemodialysis session of 2 hours. I then built up slowly during the next week or so to a total of 4 hours per session. Found dialysis very hard on my body. My blood pressure would plummet every time. My legs felt like leg weights. I had a headache throughout the session, and I really struggled to walk to the transport. I didn't feel any better. It was realised that due to only being able to have a slot 3 days per week, that a 4-hour session was too aggressive on my body. So I asked if I could start the self-care to try and take some control back, and I pursued my transplant unit to start training on the portable next stage machine, which is Norbit at the back of me. After a few emails, phone calls and stalking, I would say, on my part, they agreed to start training me up on the machine in January 2021. And as I completed self-care, I only needed to learn the machine, so I was dialysing at home within 4 weeks. So life on home dialysis. What does that look like? As we know, whether you conduct at home or in unit treatment, it doesn't come without its challenges. But both myself and my husband are fully trained on all aspects of the next stage machine, from simple alarms to emergency procedures, which we've had a few. I changed the way I dialyzed to 4 times per week at 3-hour sessions, and this seemed to work well and wasn't that aggressive on my body. However, after only 4 months, my neckline started to alarm each time, and I wasn't getting a good dialysis as I should have been. I ended up in hospital with it being flushed and then an infection, so pumped full of antibiotics. My surgeon decided it was time to revisit my original fistula and look at inserting a graft, which is a tube in my forearm, to open up the veins and connect my vein to my artery. So I had this done in May 2021. This was a success. And apart from 2 weeks of needling training, which I went back into the unit, I was back home again. I still had a few issues along the way. For example, only a couple of weeks ago, I was in hospital due to my veins narrowing. So I had to have a procedure called angioplasty, which was to balloon the parts of my veins that had narrowed at the top and bottom of my graft. However, I am back to my routine home dialysis, and everything, touch wood, seems to be going fine. So what does the future hold? Although I am a peer supporter for the National Kidney Federation and very much an advocate for home dialysis, which I will shout about to anyone that listens, I'm on the transplant list and I've been since March 2020. But as we know, COVID had a big part to play in the delay of transplants. I remain as positive as I can, the hope that one day I will get that call and the transplant will go ahead. But during lockdown, I created a company called Quick Designs Limited, which provides clothing for dialysis and other IV treatments, which gives you quick and easy access as well as keeping you warm. And that was one of my main focuses, keeping you warm, as I was always cold on dialysis. I am very hopeful that this takes off, and with each sale, you can have the comfort in knowing that a donation is given to my local KPA of Saka. So now I would like to hand over to one of my colleagues called Patricia Gooden, who is also on home dialysis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to the NKF for inviting me to speak today. Yes, I'm going to be talking to you about PD dialysis today. First of all, I want to talk to you about where everything began. I was actually born in the UK. My mother died when I was 2 years old. And when my dad remarried, he decided to take us to live in the Caribbean, Jamaica to be exact. And I grew up there as a child. Now, during my childhood, I always felt a bit ill, but couldn't really determine what was causing it. And as a child as well, I wasn't sure if it was in my head or if it really was happening. Anyway, I will expand on it a bit more. I came back to the UK in the late 80s. I should say I had my first child in Jamaica, and when I brought him to this country, he was 9 months old. And the end of this year, he'll be 40 years old. So I've been here quite some time. Now the diagnosis. I became pregnant in 1993 with my second child. And I started to feel really ill. So I went to my doctor and I said, "Doctor, I think I'm pregnant, but I also think I'm diabetic." The GP made an appointment for me to actually go to the hospital to get tested. I was tested the following day, and yes, I was pregnant, and yes, I was also diabetic, and I had to go on insulin that very, very day. And during my 9 months of pregnancy, I had to undergo intense monitoring so that the baby would be born with the right weight and not actually develop diabetes as well. Now I've called this one education. During my illness, or late, by the time my daughter was about 10 or whatever, I started to be constantly sick, always vomiting. And the doctor sent me for a scan. Whilst doing the scan, the technician turned to me and said, "How do you feel knowing that you have kidney failure?" I had no idea that I had kidney failure. I don't know how I got home. I know I drove home, but I can't remember the journey. I was then put in low clearance. And in low clearance, I remember being put in front of a television with videos showing me what dialysis is all about. I had absolutely no idea what I was looking at. And I was in a daze, to be honest. And I made a vow that day that when I know more about dialysis, that I will never allow any patient that I know to go through what I went through. Absolutely no education at all. I was told that when my appetite drops, then it means that my kidney failure would have probably gone to a really bad stage. So I had a catheter fitted roughly a year and a half in advance. That Christmas 2012, I think it was, no one realized that I wasn't eating. I did all the cooking and everything and was running around everyone, but no one noticed that I was just picking at my food. And a couple of days after Christmas, I actually fainted in the house and broke my ankle. I was rushed to Princess Alexandra Hospital and then sent to the Royal Free, and that's where my PD dialysis started. Now, once on PD, well, before I started PD, to be honest, officially, someone came to the house and did it for me. Then I was given the training. I was sent to Kew, where Baxter's did a fantastic job of showing me how to use my machine, telling me everything I needed to know. And I can't thank them enough for what they did for me in those days. I became familiar with it. I knew how to set the machine. I knew how to order my stock, etc. By then, my children had left home and I was alone at night in a big house by myself in Epping. And I became really isolated. Thankfully, Baxter's, the nurses provided a lot of support, but I also wanted to meet other people. I went to my GP and I asked if she could introduce me to anyone else who's doing this type of dialysis. But unfortunately, I was the only one in the area doing dialysis. The thing about PD is that I was able to do this at home, by myself, in my own time, and that's why I chose PD, because I was still working and I needed that flexibility. If I had a problem, there's a number that I can ring and it's answered in America, and you can ring that number 24 hours a day, whatever you want to, 24/7. I was supported by the PD nurses. And believe it or not, I was able to go on a Mediterranean cruise with my daughter. And that was one of the happiest things about PD. Everything was shipped out there for me. The staff, and to be honest, They upgraded me and I became a VIP patient, and I'm grateful for that. Sorry, my slide, right. Anyway, I was on dialysis, then I had a transplant. And my transplant happened in 2014. Unfortunately, I then had to go back on PD because my kidney rejected, and I started PD again in 2021. And you can see a photo of the PD machine. Of course, there were tears. I was really, really devastated. I just couldn't see the future at that time. However, now I'm back on PD. I decided to stay with PD again because of the flexibility, and I'm used to it. I now there's a company called Bionicle, and this is better for me than before. Now that my mobility is not as great as it used to be, I have a technician who comes in every day who will set up my machine for me, and all I do is connect and disconnect myself. And this is really helping me to enjoy this second stage of PD even more than PD, even more than I did the last time. Next slide, please. Don't know what happened. Now, how do I feel today? At 8:45 every evening, I prepare myself to go on my machine. It doesn't have to be 8:45, but that's the time that I've set for myself. So that I'm usually on the machine before 9 o'clock. I work out the calculations. It's automatic now. If I'm on at 9, I come off at 6. If I'm off at 10, and at 10, I come off at 7. I feel educated now. I understand it more than I did before. I can talk to my fellow kidney patients. And as said earlier, I'm actually a peer supporter, and I support other kidney patients who want to be on PD. I'm engaged in charity work, and I'm engaged with my local KPA at the Royal Free Hospital in London. Next slide. What next, you want to ask me? Well, I am waiting for a new kidney. As I said earlier, I'm an NKF peer supporter. I work with Kidney Research UK. I'm a trustee for Kidney Care UK. And I'm a committee member at the Royal Free Hospital KPA. I keep myself busy. I tell my family I'm all things kidney. Next slide, please. Conclusion, I just want to say thanks to the NKF, to Kidney Care UK, to Kidney Research UK, to my local KPA, and to the president of my local KPA, David Myers, who helped me with the photos you see today on my slide, and to Pete. Thank you all for listening. Hope you've learned something from me. Any questions? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, ladies. No questions at all for you two. So you've obviously covered everything perfectly.